I have no idea why I'm making this video now of all times. I'm kind of in the middle of doing something, but I've decided to record this video now. It's been too long anyways. So Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic released quite some time ago, and I have been quite late to talk about it. I do have a reason why, but I'll leave that to the end of the video because I don't think anyone cares. So first off, as a brief total summary right at the start, I think if I had to rank this on a tier list, it'd go an A tier. Like, I actually did a tier list ranking at one point recently of all the Five Nights at Freddy's games. I don't know exactly what I said back then, but if I go from A to E tier, this is definitely an A tier Five Nights at Freddy's game. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really good. However, it was kind of missing something. I think most of us can agree with that now. It's been some time. I think most of us settled in our thoughts. I think a lot of us can agree there is something missing from this game. And I think a lot of people like Markiplier have chalked it up to nostalgia. I don't think so, and I'll give my theories on what it is later. But for now, I'll just leave it at it's A tier. It's really, really solid. What is here is really, really good. And if anything, the only thing that's missing, I think, could be fixed with DLC anyways. So, really good, and I'm really optimistic for the future of this game, and optimistic for the future of the franchise as a whole. I actually have a lot of thoughts, and I want to do a video later on about what I think the future of Five Nights at Freddy's is, and I'm very curious if anyone would be interested in seeing that. It's probably more interesting than this video, because this is just some random guy saying, hey, here's my thoughts on the game. So that was my brief summary. I think it's really, really good. Let's get into let's get into some details now. Now, first off, I want to just say this right off the bat, too. This is not a video about how well made I think the game is. It's just like this is personal enjoyment. I do want to make that separation, the distinction right now, because if this was Security Breach, I'd also be saying I'd loved it, and I know Security Breach isn't well put together, objectively speaking. But this is like opinion-based, not objective standpoint. I don't want to speak objectively because it's kind of it's a hard thing to talk about. I just want to give my opinions on the game and see if anyone agrees, and I'd like to hear your opinions out in the comments too. But to actually get to this first note I've written down, because I've written notes, because I've tried to record this video a couple of times. So the first thing I want to say off the bat is some biases of mine. What I'm looking for out of a Five Nights at Freddy's game, because it is not the same as other people. I mean, we all have our things we like, we all have our things we dislike, we all have our things we don't really care about that other people do. So I wanted to start this little thing off with me saying what my biases are, so you can like get a general idea of the things that I care about when it comes to these games, so you get a general reason as to why I'm saying some of the things I'm saying, and why I might be ignoring some of the things that you feel like I should be saying. So first off, I am not a Five Nights at Freddy's fan because of the lore. I want to give that right off the bat right here, because a lot of fans in the franchise are like lore first. It's the lore, it's the story that matters in a Five Nights at Freddy's game. For me, I am here for other reasons. I like Five Nights at Freddy's because I like the gameplay. I think they're fun games. I like Five Nights at Freddy's because I love the mascot characters. I love Freddy in the gang. I love the atmosphere, the eerie atmosphere, but it doesn't overstep into horror because I don't like horror. That's the second bias that I've kind of like jumped a little bit ahead in. I'm not a horror fan. I don't really care for things that are gory or overly scary. It's like, I like fun games. I like having a good time playing the games. Horror's not really something I care much for compared to other people, and the lore isn't something I care much for either. Although, not to say I don't get into the lore, because I do get into the lore, I'm very into the lore, it's just, for most people, the lore sells them on the game. For me, I only care about the lore if I'm already sold on the game, if that makes any sense. And, the third note I've gotten written in here for bias I should call up is actually when I've already said I actually did like Security Breach. So, whether my opinion matters to you or not, you should know that I am someone who likes Security Breach, so maybe my opinion doesn't weigh very much. Maybe it doesn't have much weight, because I know a lot of people don't like that game, and for good reasons. It is for good reasons, and I'm not going to say that it's unjustified. There is good reasons to dislike Security Breach, but I did like it, so yeah, it's something I've written down here, something I should say that, hey, my opinions, again, are not probably going to align with common consensus. Although I have seen a lot of people love Secret of the Mimic, so maybe my opinions do align with common consensus here. Funny thing about being an individual, isn't it? You kind of sometimes align with everyone else, and sometimes you don't. I have rambled. So, yeah, expect that a lot in this video. I ramble a lot. Next note in here, the gameplay. Yes, so there are two big, strong highlights when it comes to the gameplay for me. Now, when it comes to gameplay, I actually should say this. I didn't write this in my notes. My notes are pretty bare bones, actually. But when it comes to gameplay, I prefer games with fun ideas the games that have, like, say, like I'll pick two games as an example. Here's two scenarios. You have a game with fun ideas, but they aren't executed very well. Versus a game with generic ideas, but they're executed very well. I would always prefer the more fun option, because I have played quite a few, quote, bad games, and I've enjoyed quite a few, quote, bad games. I think that matters a lot to me, a lot more than other people, if that makes sense. I would prefer games that have more distinct and fun and interesting gameplay mechanics, even if they're not as, like, fleshed out. The ones that, something I've seen a million times before, but it's handled better. And I think The Secret of the Mimic definitely falls into the latter category. I think a lot of the things in this game I have seen a lot, and that's actually something I'm going to call out later on when I say it's missing something. Spoiler alert, it's related to gameplay. Again, though, I'll save the specifics of what it's missing till the very end, because I'm mean. But the gameplay, I feel like, is quite generic. I feel like I've seen a lot of games with gameplay very similar to this. Not to say the gameplay is bad. Generic does not mean bad, it just means I've seen it before. And in terms of the gameplay, it's actually really good. I actually really enjoyed it. It was really fun to play. I could give a couple of highlights in terms of gameplay. The White Tiger section was not one of them. Look, I know it's a fan favorite, but I think the White Tiger section was a fan favorite because of how spooky it was. Whereas, like, the gameplay, most of the White Tiger section is fine for me, but that first section where there's nowhere to know where to go, and sometimes the lights just won't lead you to where you need to go for some reason. Yeah, that's not my favorite section in terms of gameplay. It's scary, and I love the White Tiger. I'll get to that later. But in terms of sections I actually do like, because I want to talk about the highlights of this game, obviously I say this, but I've seen a lot of people say they love these sections, so I'm not alone here, I don't think. Things like the Nurse Dolly section. All the way up until she becomes Molten, because then it's overly scripted and I don't like the Molten section. But the normal Nurse Dolly section when she's on her track, I think that's really interesting. I thought that was a really cool section. I loved how it looked like the animatronic Nurse Dolly was very limited. The level design makes it so she is not. And I think that was a very interesting section. I liked it. I wish that section was a little bit longer because it was pretty much one singular room. It was one singular room. Because then you got the second part of the Nurse Dolly section, which is also a highlight. Nurse Dolly got two highlights in terms of gameplay. They got to collect the trash cubes around the place. I loved that section. That was heaps of fun. Of course, if I can't talk about sections like that without bringing up Chica, the Chica section was really fun too, and I loved the part in the office with Chica where you have to, well, you don't have to, it's entirely optional, that's the best part. You have all this mail around the place. Get you the code to access the birthday room. I think that is great, because it's hard on its own, because it's a later in the game area, but it's really fun extra challenge to go through all that if you want that extra challenge. Now, I didn't go for the challenge in my first playthrough. I died like once or twice, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. But I have since gone back and beaten the game, like, entirely. I've 100%ed it already. I 100%ed it quite early on. I think I did it in, like, day 2 or something. It was a pretty short game. Yeah, it was quite short. But it was really good. I really enjoyed most of the game. And even the parts I didn't like aren't even like, oh, I didn't like them. It's, oh, they're not the highlight compared to other sections. Like, as I said, the White Tiger section. I loved the White Tiger section. In terms of gameplay, the highlight's going to Chica of the White Tiger, for sure. Now, in terms of horror, yeah, White Tiger absolutely slaps. Yeah, I don't want to get my words confused here. But I did like that section still. And I liked the entire game's gameplay as a whole. I think it was really well put together. I think it was really fun to play. I loved the generic encounters with the Mimic, where you throw the wind-up rats to... Is it wind-up mice? It's wind-up mice, isn't it? Because I keep saying rat, and it's always mice, I'm pretty sure. If anyone really cared about the distinction. Anyway, the wind-up mice you throw away, and the Mimic kind of goes after them, and you can sneak by. But it's really tense, actually, because you can't throw them very far. So it feels like you're making yourself vulnerable every time you need to make any progress in the game, which is really tense. The game is very tense, I will say that too. I don't think I have... No, I literally don't even have the atmosphere of the game in my notes at all. But I think this game is as scary as Five Nights at Freddy's 4. It's very tense the entire game. just the generic gameplay. Like, there's no sections where the Mimic just leaves you alone. I mean, there are, but they're very few and far between. You're not getting anywhere without encountering the Mimic. It's everywhere. And it is always coming for you, and the tools you have at your disposal are always quite limited. And it creates a very, very tense experience that I really enjoyed playing. It was great, I loved it. Another thing I really, really loved, there's two other parts. I actually have notes under gameplay, and that wasn't even one of them. One of the notes I've got in here, though, was the mouse controls. It was probably the most obvious thing about the game, for me, was just how immersive the game felt using the mouse to open doors and stuff. It was really unique. I don't think you'd be able to tell how interesting it was from watching a video. But if you've played the game, you'd know how interesting and how good it felt. It wasn't really a big gameplay thing. Like, it wasn't like in your face as like a main gameplay mechanic or anything. It's just the entire game is set up like that. It's just how the game is. And it's very immersive and feels really good to play. I think that's kind of part of why it works so well, because even though it is kind of, quote, a more generic style of game, it's this interaction to it. The way you move everything with the mouse, it's really immersive in a way that other games in this style don't do. And it's really, I really, really like it. And obviously it's a leftover from VR. Like, I don't even think I need to point that out. But it's obviously because Secret of the Mimic was originally designed to be a VR game, and this is just kind of a leftover of that. It's a really nice leftover. Like, it works so well. And I really hope that this is a thing that becomes a staple of Five Nights at Freddy's moving forward. I would love that. There's actually quite a few things in this game that I think this should just be a staple moving forward. Like, even though I don't really care about the horror too much, I think the horror of this game is a really good execution. Because not every section is horrifying. Like, there's most of the MCM is actually kind of chill. I don't know if that's the right word. But then you have sections like the White Tiger, it's just, wow. I've got sidetracked. Note 2 I've got under gameplay. The only other note I've got in here, the level design. Oh my. Murray's costume manor is such a good game location. I love the way that even in individual rooms, like, it's set up in a way that you can always see where you need to go, and you can always see where the Mimic is. And sometimes that will be, you can just look ahead, there it is. But a big chunk of the time, you have to look at your surroundings through tiny gaps between boxes, or any other random thing that's laying around the place. That is amazing level design. The fact that you can kind of keep tabs on it the entire time, but it's such a small gap most of the time, that a lot of the time you don't get a good look at the Mimic. You don't get a good look at what costume it's wearing because you're taking tiny peeks at it through gaps. And I think that's really good, one, for horror because you don't really know what you're looking at. And two, it's just great level design because you can always see where it is. You can always see where you need to go. It's nothing like Security Breach where you just kind of left it in an open area. It's a little more refined. A lot more refined. And so, of course, it's not like Ruin is just a single track. There's a lot of exploration in this game, too. Like, even across all the rooms, there's a lot of rooms you don't go to in the story. Or in the main game, I mean. That you can take as optional paths. You can also, like, entirely optional areas, which are really cool challenges to get you rewards and stuff with items. Which help with the Manor.exe, which is a really, really cool concept. There's a lot I really love about the gameplay setup here, especially in terms of level design. Level design really is something that I noticed a lot in my first playthrough, and thinking, man, this is really, really good. You can always see what you need to do. And again, it's not because the game outright tells you a lot of the time. The game might give you a room you need to go to, but most of the time you can just tell, just from the level design, like, yeah, it's down that hallway. Yeah, there's a branch, but it's obviously that little area back there. Or, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm really conveying that very well. But I think it's a very, very good location. It's very well set up. So I suppose I should talk about the story. Best in the franchise. It is the best story presentation in the franchise, in my opinion. Presentation. I don't know how... I'm not going to talk about, like, how I feel about the story itself, because, in my opinion, the Five Nights at Freddy's, as a whole, the whole franchise connects into one big story. I'm not very deep into the story enough to really give my opinions on the specifics of it, what things could be done better, what things are done better in the books, things like that. But what I do know, and what I can say, is that the way the story was presented in Secret of the Mimic was something I have been begging Five Nights at Freddy's to do for a very long time. Because it has layers to the story. A lot of the previous games, it's like, yeah, you have hidden details to tell you the previous story, like hidden in background elements or hidden in mini games. And even when the games started giving you explicit exposition, usually that was it. Like in Pizzeria Simulator, like the main story of that game is in the completion ending, and most of the story is portrayed there. I mean, of course, there's got 3 mini games as well, but you're not finding secrets in that game. You're just getting told it. Usually, Five Nights at Freddy's games either lean explicit or implicit, and very, very few times does it do both. So the story of this game, there's layers. Because on one hand, you have this very, very, very surface level story. Like, if you don't care about the story at all, then you can just not engage with it. You just walk through, you play as Arnold, and pretty much nothing's stopping you from just moving on and just doing your general goal of getting Mimic, and then getting your ass beat. Then you go a little bit deeper. They'll find the audio logs, and most people will look for the audio logs if they have any care for the story. They'll try and look into that, or try and hear the story of Edwin and his history with Fazbear Entertainment. That whole mess, and how, William Afton took everything from Edwin, like including his home. It's kind of crazy. And then you go deeper still. You go to more the implied stuff, because there is an implied element. Things like the owner in the basement, or sorry, F10 and 4 in the basement. There's 2 mimics, and the whole how does that work, and what did Edwin build, what did Henry build? There's all that theorizing element at the bottom. And then there's the real deep cuts, even deeper still, with the whole metaphorical stuff with things like moon.exe, and the whole symbolism between Gregory, David, and, the crying child. All that is, like, really deep, so you've got, like, at least 4 layers of storytelling here, and multiple, like, plot lines, too. It's not just about Edwin and Fazbear Entertainment. Some of it's about Edwin and his grieving and the insanity he does there. Some of it's about his father, even. Yeah, it goes a bunch of different places. I'm not going to sit here and try to remember every single story moment in the game, because there's a lot. That's what I love so much about it. There's a lot of story in a bunch of different places, and it's well fleshed out, all of it, and it's got layers, all of it. And something, as I said, I've been begging Fast Freeze to do this for the longest time, and it's finally happened, and I loved it. Now, I've got a note in here for, like, some miscellaneous phrases here. It's the scariest game in the franchise. I think I said that earlier, but I do think it's scarier than Five Nights at Freddy's 4. I really do. Just the tension of that game is on the same level as 4, except in an actually big game that isn't over in an hour. It's like, you gotta at least put a few hours in, unless you're speedrunning it and beat it in like 2 minutes, but that's besides the point. It's a bigger scaled game with the same amount of horror, if not, no, I don't think it's more scary, but it's just as scary as Five Nights at Freddy's 4, I think. It's similar in a bigger game, which is really impressive, because usually the longer the game and the more exposed to the horror, the less it works. But I've done a repeat playthrough of the game. I've seen YouTubers play the game, and it's still tense. It still gets you at times. So it's definitely one of the scariest games in the franchise. It's got to be up there. And the scariest part still is that this game, as I said earlier, it's coming to VR. Now, there is a teaser. We don't know when it's coming to VR. I don't even remember when that was confirmed, because I know it was originally announced to be in VR, but then at some point it was switched over to flat mode, and I don't remember when it was confirmed, but I'm pretty sure it is confirmed that they are working on VR. And that is the next big thing they're working toward with Secret of the Mimic. And you can also tell that too, because, fun fact, we know there's DLC planned. We don't know if that DLC is going to come, but it's planned. So there's some idea for it. It doesn't seem like it started development though, so it looks like, as I said, VR mode first seems to be the first thing coming to Secret of the Mimic. And I've got that information there from like SteamDB, by the way, about the DLC. It's SteamDB shows that they've already got a DLC there, and yeah, they haven't done anything with it yet, but it's there and it could come in the future, and that will be for another video if you want to see a prediction on what that DLC will be. But the VR mode, that's what's coming in the future, and it's probably the next big thing that's coming. And DJ Sturf, I believe he's a playtester for Secret of the Mimic. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he is. He has teased that there's something about that game coming in 2026. I would assume that he's teasing the very next thing that's coming, which, as I just said, should be VR mode. So it seems like the VR mode for this game is coming next year, which I'm pretty sure would also align with Hope Wanted 1 and Hope Wanted 2, because I'm pretty sure their flat modes came nearly a year later as well. Something like that. I could be mistaken, but it sounds about right timeline-wise, so that seems to be the case. In which case, damn, this game was one of the scariest in flat mode. Like, Hope Wanted 1 and Hope Wanted 2, I mean, Hope Wanted 2 wasn't that scary, just in general, but it had very scary moments. But once you played it in flat mode, like, wasn't very scary at all. Neither of them really were. This game's scary even in flat. and it's one of the scariest even in flat mode. Once you play this in VR, it's going to be horrifying. I don't even want to imagine it. I am genuinely terrified about playing this game in VR. And here's the thing. This is like a teaser for why this video took so long, by the way. I used to run these games on my laptop, and it barely ran VR. I tried. I could run VR by technicality, but it couldn't really run VR, and we really struggled running recording software with certain games too, which is why I didn't stream Secret of the Mimic, because not enough resources. It just crashed. I've now got a better computer now, and I have tested, and I can record Security Breach at 60 FPS. So that's something. So I don't know about Secret of the Mimic. I gotta experiment with that more. I don't know about VR. I've still got to test that to see how well it can do that. But there might be a chance that I can record and stream VR now that I have a better computer. A chance. I can't promise that, but I should at least be able to play it in VR. And I will be playing it in VR when it comes out. And that scares me, because it's going to be horrifying. And I really hope I will be able to stream that. And you can see me lose my mind at the game. Now, I love it when games have like side characters. Like, I loved it when the mediocre melodies are introduced in 6. So when a game comes out and has like a bunch of these mascot designs everywhere because it's a mascot workshop, hell yeah, right up my alley. I love every single one of those little guys. All of them that are allowed, all their color alts. Like the puppet show characters, they were awesome. I just really love the amount of characters in this game that we haven't seen before, and the ones that we have seen before getting early versions too. It was great. I loved the designs in this game, and the designs are part of the appeal of Five Nights at Freddy's to me. I think Five Nights at Freddy's often has really good designs. I love the mascot characters, and I love the mascot characters in Secret of the Mimic as well. Okay, I didn't put this in my notes, so I don't really know exactly where I'm going to slot this into the final video, but I'm still in editing, and I want to say that there is one big problem I have with Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. There's one that I think is quite huge, and is like the one thing that made me not want to give it a positive review on Steam, because it is a really big issue in my opinion, which is the save system. The save system for this game is genuinely terrible. How it works is it has autosaves, and that's it. It's just autosaves scattered across the game. And there's a lot of autosaves, to be fair. You're not going to lose progress from autosaving, that's not the issue. The issue is, that's it. It's just one autosave file, and it constantly autosaves across the game. So if you encounter an issue, like for example, if you encounter an issue with Security Breach where it results in you screwing over your save file, whatever, you just go back to an old one, right? Because it gives you manual saves, you can go back. You do that in Ruin, you accidentally screw over your save file, whatever, you go back to the chapter select, you go to the start of the chapter again. Not that big of a loss. In Secret of the Mimic, there is no chapter select, no checkpoint selection of any kind, there's no way to back up your save files from the game itself. If something goes wrong with your save data, you lost it all, and you have to go all the way back to the start of the game, which really sucks. Now, sure, Secret of the Mimic isn't as buggy as like Security Breach was, but when the bug does happen, it's so catastrophic because of this. And you have really big issues too, like I've seen people accidentally fall out of the world, and it causes them to hit a autosave in the basement, because remember, the autosaves are everywhere and they're really common. So you'll have issues where you fall out of the world accidentally somehow, and it'll autosave in the basement or something, or in some other area that you don't have access to. So when you load up the game, you're just stuck in there forever because you don't have the permissions to get out. It just teleports you in an area you're not supposed to be in. And yeah, it just causes you to softlock your entire game, and you can't even go back to a previous checkpoint or autosave because that doesn't exist in Secret of the Mimic. You have to go all the way back to the very beginning. And this has happened. This isn't even super uncommon. I know several people, pretty much everyone who I've seen play the game, has encountered a big softlock somewhere in it. So it's not even that uncommon, I feel like. But it's not like super frequent, but it happens enough that it's definitely a really heavy-hitting issue with Secret of the Mimic, in my opinion. It really needs some way it needs this checkpoint system, a way to go back to a previous checkpoint in some way. Either manual saves, either it has the game set up in a chapters like Ruin so you can go back to a previous chapter, or just having a backup button on the screen just to allow you to back up your save file. Because when I lost my save data playing the game, because it happened to me as well, I was not comfortable playing the game again until it was going to be patched, until I realized I could go into the game files and back up my save files in the files themselves. And I feel like I shouldn't have to do that to play this game. But I did kind of have to do that because I lost too much and I was unhappy with it. It actually made me leave a negative review on the Steam page at the time because I thought it didn't matter how good the game was, this issue is just so severe that I don't think, no matter how good it is, I don't think it redeems it. And I still kind of stand by that. As much as I love this game and consider it an A-tier game, and I would still say I really enjoyed it, it is a big, big issue, I think, with the game. I think if anything needs to be fixed about Secret of the Mimic, it's that save system, and I really, really hope future games have better save systems than that. Because even Security Breach had a better save system. This is definitely the worst save system a Fights Freddy's game has had, so I really hope that this gets touched on in an update, as well as just doesn't get repeated in future games. Anyway, go back to the original video now. Now I want to talk about what's missing. Because I teased it at the start of this video, I've been teasing it throughout. I believe that there is something missing in Secret of the Mimic, and I do not think it's nostalgia. So what do I think it is then? Well, I think I'm not the only person who says this, but it's the gameplay lacks the Fights Freddy's elements. And I don't think it should be a sit and survive. I'm not saying that. But what I think is missing is the resource management. I don't know if you've noticed, but in Secret of the Mimic, there's no resources to manage. And I feel like that's a big part of Fights Freddy's identity, is that it's always been a resource management survival game. Survive for a certain period of time, make your resources last long enough to be able to survive the game. And even Security Breach did this to an extent, because you have plenty of resources in that game, with things like Freddy's power and individual resources in certain areas, and the tools you have later on in the game have limited uses, things like that. There's resources even in Security Breach, but there kind of isn't in Secret of the Mimic. The only real resource management that Secret of the Mimic has is your inventory, how you can only carry one thing at a time. But it doesn't really feel the same, like you're not trying to make that one thing you have last with you or anything like that. It's just, if you need to collect 2 items, you got to go back through the section again. So I think that is a big deal, I think. Because every single game, you've always had to manage something. Even if it's not a constantly depleting resource, you're managing entrances, you're managing just something, but you don't in Secret of the Mimic. There's no resource management at all. And I think that's a big gameplay element to be lacking. But, let's say, I don't think it's much of a problem in its own right. There's another thing they could have done as well, even if they didn't want to do resource management as part of the main gameplay, because I will say this again, the gameplay for Secret of the Mimic is really good, it's really fun, what is there is great. Maybe adding in limited resources on top of that would have been too much, wouldn't have been effective. In which case, another thing they could have done is something that both System Location and Security Breach did, which is just having Five Nights at Freddy's styled survival sections just as sections, like minigame sections throughout the game. And I actually think this should be a staple of the series going forward. Now, it wasn't handled very well in Security Breach, I will admit that, but the idea was there, and I think the idea was a good one. I think the idea of Fights Freddy's games that stray too far away from the Fights Freddy style gameplay should have sections, like a minigame section, even if only one, to call back to it, to remind people this is a Fights Freddy's game through the gameplay. Because obviously, it's very much a Fights Freddy's game. The story, the atmosphere, it's very, very Fights Freddy's. This game couldn't get away with not being a Five Nights at Freddy's game. It's obviously very Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm not saying it doesn't feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's game, I'm just saying the gameplay lacks elements of what is typical of a Five Nights at Freddy's game, to the point where it stops feeling like a Five Nights at Freddy's game. And for a lot of people, just the game being free roam was enough for that, because a lot of people don't think Five Nights at Freddy's games should be free roam. I think it's fine, as long as there's other elements that make it feel like Five Nights at Freddy's, but this game didn't have other elements. Which as I just said, I think every game should either have a consistent resource that you need to manage throughout the game, just like the classic Five Nights at Freddy's games had things like power or the different entrances you need to manage. I think there should be a consistent resource, or it should have minigame sections where you are doing typical Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay. One of the two, or both, like Security Breach did. I think that should be a standard going forward, and I feel like a lot of people who say this game doesn't feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's game, I think they're right in terms of gameplay, because it doesn't have those sort of things. But as I said at the start of the video, I do think that can be saved with DLC. Because it is, at the end of the day, the only real gameplay complaint that I have, and the biggest complaint probably, honestly, in this game, is what I said, this is what I think is missing from the game. At the end of the day, that can just be tacked on with DLC. Because that's kind of what System Location did. It did it in update, not DLC, but it's still post-launch content. It still had the private room boss, but for the most part, most of that type of gameplay was in the custom map, which was an update. I feel like Secret of the Mimic could have DLC, which plays like a traditional Five Nights at Freddy's game, or at least have, as I said, that resource. it's something that could very easily be fixed with DLC. Honestly, it's the perfect thing for DLC too, because if you think about it, DLC is specifically for adding new content on top of what's already there. And what's already there in Secret of the Mimic is really good. It's just, it's lacking that gameplay element, which, as I said, that's just like the perfect thing for Secret of the Mimic DLC, for DLC to solve. So I do hope that because I don't think I'm the only person who said that. I think a lot of people have been saying that it doesn't really feel like Five Freddy's game, at least in terms of gameplay. And I think that's the perfect thing for DLC to solve. So I'm holding out hope that maybe they'll listen to the community and will do that for DLC. Speaking of, I now want to talk about one last thing when it comes to this game, which is the future of Secret of the Mimic. What do I think is coming next? So obviously, I think I brought this up earlier, but VR mode I'm pretty sure is the next thing that's happening. I think that's their focus right now, is making sure the game is playable in VR. And if I can play it in VR, I will definitely play it on stream. Now, I can record VR like Help Wanted, and I could record flat mode Secret of the Mimic. Now that I've got a new computer, I can now do both those things. So I hope that I can record / stream Secret of the Mimic in VR. I can't promise that because it's not out yet, but I will try. Yeah, if I can do that, I'll definitely do it for sure, because I didn't get to stream my original playthrough, which is a shame, but because I had a lot of fun moments there. But I'll talk about my thoughts, like, when that happens. But I do think VR mode is the next thing that's going to happen, and I think that's their current priority, and I think I would expect that next year. It just feels right. No like hard evidence or anything, it's just I feel like that would be a next year kind of release. It could be late this year. Okay, so I've actually just checked, and it took about 6 months for both Help Wanted to be ported to flat mode and Help Wanted 2 to be ported to flat mode. So I would expect Secret of the Mimic to be about the same. Now, I do think porting to VR, I feel like would be a little bit more complicated because there's more things got to work out. So maybe it would take a little bit longer. I'm not sure. For now, I'm just going to predict about 6 months again, maybe a little bit more. In which case, again, I would expect that early next year, maybe January next year would probably be my guess. I do think it's next year. It just feels kind of right to me that would be the next year thing. I know I'm rambling. That was only the first thing I wanted to talk about. VR mode's next, I think. Then after that is DLC. Now, I don't know if anyone's looked at SteamDB, but I look at SteamDB all the time. And Steel Studios, have already got a DLC package for Secret of the Mimic. Now, last I checked, which to be fair, this video might take so long to come out, this might change by the time you see this. But last I checked, they have not started developing this DLC, because we can see the update history. We know when they upload, like, internal updates. We can see that information. It's publicly available. We don't know the contents of it or the name of it or anything like that, obviously, but we know when they do things. And so far, the only updates that have happened to the Secret of the Mech DLC package is global updates Steam has pushed out to like thousands of things. So it doesn't look like Steel Studios have begun developing DLC yet. At the time of last time I checked, I'll hopefully like edit in something on screen to show if that's still the case. So I don't think that this is another reason why I think they're prioritizing VR, because although it looks like they have a plan for DLC, I mean, you wouldn't have a DLC package if you had no plan for DLC, right? So I'm confident in saying they have a plan, but I don't think they've begun development yet, because I think they're working on VR mode first. As I keep saying, I'm pretty sure that's the priority. So I think VR will be next year, and then maybe like early next year, and then DLC will either be late next year. Just in case you're watching this for like, I don't know, years in the future or something, next year is 2026. So I think maybe early 2026 would be VR mode, and then I think after that comes out, it'll be another good year, because it's Secret of the Mix like Security Breach. It's like a full free roam game. It's not a minigame compilation like All Wanted. You can't just throw in a couple of levels in it. The DLC is most likely going to be something akin to Ruin, where it's like a whole other thing. So I do think it would take a good year to make. So I do think after they release VR mode, it'll probably be early 2027. I might predict Secret of the Mech DLC will come out. Another thing I want to talk about is what I think would be in the DLC. Now for here on out, I am actually going to call this out. I don't know if I already said it or not, but I'm going to say it now just in case. I do plan to make a future of Five Nights at Freddy's video, where I intend to go into my predictions for the next game, or next few games, things like that. So some of this will be repeated in my next video, whenever that video is. So I don't know if I want to go too in-depth on the future in that kind of respect, but I do want to at least talk about things directly related to Secret of the Mimic. So first off, that is the DLC. Because I do have a DLC package, I think I have a plan, I think it will happen. Secret of the Mimic, although it didn't grow that much, the already existing fans of the franchise, I think, really enjoyed Secret of the Mimic. I mean, I know I did, and most people I see have enjoyed it. It's just I'm pretty sure the only complaints that I've really seen is this doesn't feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's game, and which I said I think that can be fixed with DLC. I think I mentioned that earlier. I'll go into that more soon. And also the lore, but I mean, let's be real, every single game gives lore insight, and every single game makes people upset that it destroyed their headcanons, so really that's nothing new. I think that's the only real issues people have with Secret of the Mimic. Otherwise, I think people love the game, so I think it makes sense that they would do DLC, especially if they already had one planned. Like, Help Wanted 2 also had DLC planned, but they themselves said in an interview that Help Wanted 2 didn't do as well as they wanted it to, so I'm pretty sure they got cancelled and became the teaser update. But Help Wanted 2 was supposed to have DLC, but it got cancelled. I think Secret of the Mimic did better than Help Wanted 2. I think it at least did better than that. I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure it did. Okay, so I'm really far in editing. Most of this video is actually recorded back in August. So now I'm October here. I just wanted to show something I didn't check back then that I probably should have. Security Breach got 85% positivity rating. Help Wanted 2 got 90, like 91, 92-ish. 98, 83 for Secret of the Mimic. This is actually the worst performing Five Nights at Freddy's game. So I am not super confident in it performing well. You could say, oh, maybe it's more about the Steam sales and actual reception because Help Wanted 2 actually did quite well. In which case, it's the second lowest in sales as well. So it did beat Help Wanted 2 if we're talking strictly in amount of sales. We don't have the exact information on how many sales there are, but a certain percentage tend to review. So we can get a decent, we can take a decent guess from the amount of reviews. And Secret of the Mimic does have significantly more than Help Wanted 2, but it is still pretty much nothing in comparison to the other games in the franchise. So even if you do want to say, oh, it at least did better than Help Wanted 2, at best, it's the second worst Five Nights at Freddy's game in reception-wise. So I am actually not super confident this DLC is going to happen. I'm actually going to show this too on Steam TV. As of right now, still to date, the last change is 4 months ago and it was a Steam batch change. The only thing that wasn't a Steam batch change was from before development, even before the game even came out. So as I said, they still have not started development on the DLC. And the game has performed not great. Even if better than Help Wanted 2, it's still not great. So I actually am not confident DLC will happen, because if Help Wanted 2's DLC got cancelled because it didn't do super well, this only did marginally better than Help Wanted 2 did. I mean, it did significantly better, but only in terms of sales. I don't know, I just wanted to call that out. Now I want to talk about what I actually think will be in it. First off, that staircase in the welcome lobby. Now I know a lot of people think the DLC will be Fall Fest. I disagree. Think about it for a second at what Fall Fest would be. And remember that this type of game would have a free roam DLC because it's a free roam game. So it's not a small minigame compilation where you can get away with just having a small piece of something. This would have to be a full area to explore. And think about how big Fall Fest would be. Fall Fest is a festival. Festivals are not confined to one building. They're big, they're open on a street with all nearby buildings connected to it. Fall Fest would be a very big, open place. I do think we'll get something in Fall Fest at some point, but I do not think it'll be DLC, because I think logically, Fall Fest would be too big and too new to just be DLC for Secret of the Mimic. Because that's another thing, like, Fall Fest is not where Secret of the Mimic takes place. It's a completely new location that would ideally have a completely new environment, really. So I just don't think that something that new and presumably that big should be relegated to just DLC of the existing game. I think it deserves to be its own thing. So I actually think the DLC will be at Maurice Costume Manor, just like how Ruin took place at Freddy vs. Mega Pizzaplex. And I have another reason to believe that too, because I mentioned it earlier because I got ahead of myself. But in Maurice Costume Manor, there is a staircase in the welcome lobby that is blocked off. Now normally, so what, it's a blocked off area, right? But keep in mind that Freddy vs. Mega Pizzaplex had a lot of blocked off areas, and most of them were due to development issues. But I'm going to call out 2 blocked off areas that were always intended to be blocked off. This is the area above Glamrock Beauty Salon and the area above the Cupcake Bakery. These areas will later be expanded on in Ruin. That is because the area above the Cupcake Shop would end up being the server room, and the area above the Glamrock Beauty Salon would end up being the Foxy's Log Room. So I believe that those areas were blocked off intentionally to prepare for DLC expansions. I believe what we're seeing in the welcome lobby of Murray's Costume Manor is the same thing. That it's another intentionally blocked off area to save for DLC. which is why I believe the DLC for Secret of the Mimic will take place in Murray's costume manor yet again. Most likely the aftermath of the Parachute.exe ending where everything's been torched, in my opinion. And I think at some point we'll go down that staircase. I don't have a big idea for what the DLC would be, to be honest. But I do think that it's not going to be a full fest game. I do think it'll be there. Most likely, as M1 says, Fazbear Entertainment will send another. Will probably be another person that Fazbear Entertainment sends to Murray's costume manor to retrieve the Mimic schematics, or the Mimic itself. Because we do know the Mimic gets retrieved at some point because of Help Wanted. Help Wanted's origin teaser shows that the Mimic's head, Fazbear Entertainment has the Mimic's head, and that's where they got the Mimic code from, which became Glitch Trap. So Fazbear Entertainment obviously at some point does retrieve the Mimic, and I think it would make sense for the DLC for Secret of the Mimic to be how that gets retrieved. Aftermath of Parachute.exe ending in the torched remains of Murray's costume manor, we once again try and retrieve the Mimic for Fazbear Entertainment, except hopefully this time we succeed. But even more so, there's one more thing I want to talk about, which is the next game. Now again, I'm not going to talk about my big predictions for the next game, but because that will be saved for a future video, and I have a lot of thoughts. But I want to talk about the things directly related to Secret of the Mimic. Because obviously there is a next game, it's not going to end here. To understand the future, you must first understand the past. The next game is going to be another game set in the future. Probably continuing from Ruin. I do believe that with Secret of the Mimic gets DLC, that DLC will inevitably tease the next game. Because that just tends to be what happens. Like Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC, it teased Vanny, which would end up being, quote, a major force in Security Breach. End quotation. Security Breach's Ruin DLC, obviously that cliffhanger is going to be for a future game. Help Wanted 2's teaser update, it heavily teased Secret of the Mimic. I just think it's inevitable that Secret of the Mimic, if it gets DLC, will tease the next game. If I had to take a guess, it's because as we know, Fazbear Entertainment is using these old plans from the Murray's Costume Manor era in these future locations. Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex's characters like Roxanne Wolf and Montgomery Gator, which dated back to Murray's Costume Manor. I believe that what we'll see in the DLC, things found in Murray's Costume Manor will be plans for Fazbear Entertainment, or plans for something that will be used in the next game. We'll see what plans Fazbear Entertainment will steal for the events of the next game. That's what I think will happen. We'll see some remnant of the DLC that carries over. But I don't think it's just the DLC. I think Secret of the Mimic itself is also going to have some things that carry over to the next game. Yet again, to understand the future, you must first understand the past. There are some things in this game that I think are important for the next game. I think that's why this game exists. That's why there's a prequel game that doesn't continue from Ruin straight away. The first one is obviously the big reveal of Secret of the Mimic, which is that there's 2 Mimics. I believe that will play a very important role in the next game. I believe M1 and M2 will both be major players in it. Because so far it's kind of a question mark on what's M1's doing right now. Because M2 seems to be the Mimic. But then what's M1 up to? Some people theorize M1's Glitch Trap, some people have theorized M1's Glamrock Freddy. I think M1 is a loose plot thread that we don't have the answer to right now. Because I don't think M1 is in Nexus. That's the other theory, that M1 is the MXCS. I think M1's been taken out of that console because I think modern day MXCS is running Cradle, personally. Again, this isn't the theory video, so I'm not going to go too in-depth into it. But again, the point I'm trying to make here is I think whatever M1 is, whatever theory is right, I think we'll know in the next game, because I think that will be important, and that's why they've revealed it in this game. Because I think that there's 2 Mimics that's going to be very, very important for the next game that comes out. The other thing that I think will carry over, the one last thing that I think is important from Murray's Costume Manor, from Secret of the Mimic, that will carry over to the next game, I think are the characters. The Secret of the Mimic introduced a lot of characters, and some of them are new characters from Security Breach. So for example, we've seen the origins of the daycare attendant, or I guess Moon at least. We've seen the origins of Monty, we've seen the origins of Roxy. So clearly, modern day Fazbear Entertainment are using these old Murray's Costume Manor animatronics, these old Murray's Costume Manor characters. So then when it shows us a lot of Murray's Costume Manor characters, I think it's clear that future games will also take these characters and do something new with them. There's a lot of characters in Secret of the Mimic, so I'm not going to be specific. I think it'll just be a fun game of which ones carry over, which ones don't, because I definitely feel like some of these characters will carry over. I don't think they're all just going to stay in Secret of the Mimic. I think some of them will have new versions in the future. I think that's inevitable. I feel like at least some of them will have to. And one thing I will call out is Foxy's pirate crew. We know Foxy in Security Breach got replaced with Roxy, and both of these characters are part of the pirate crew from Murray's Costume Manor. So maybe in the future Foxys will get replaced by various characters from that pirate crew. Maybe the next game will get Borson instead of Foxy or Roxy. Maybe we'll get Kit instead of those. I think various games will have their Foxy equivalents replaced by various characters from the pirate crew. That is one prediction I'm going to make right now. But aside from that, I just think just in general, some of the random mascots will just reappear. So I think those are like the main things I wanted to call out that I think will return from Secret of the Mimic in the future game, which is where I'm comfortable of leaving off this video. I think I've talked about everything I want to talk about, my thoughts on the game in general, thoughts on what's coming next. Things I think it did well, things I didn't do well. I guess there wasn't many things it didn't do well, it's just pretty much just a missed opportunity. I forgot to actually talk about that, didn't I? I mean, I've already talked about it in the previous section, but yeah, I think the DLC, if they listen to the community, should have some, like, resource management gameplay, or some survival gameplay, one of the two, hopefully. But now I'm going to end this off with the outro. Sorry if this video has been very poorly organized, if it's been very dragged out, my voice isn't very engaging or whatever. Well, thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Regardless, I'm very curious what you guys think of Secret of the Mimic, because personally, I'll say it again, just like from the intro, I think Secret of the Mimic is an A-tier Five Nights at Freddy's game. It is one of my favorite games in the franchise. I love a lot about the game. I love the level design specifically the most, I think. The characters and Murray's costume manner as a whole, I love the entire place. It's very well put together, and it's very well formatted, and the story was very, very well presented. It was very well done, I think, the story. I love the layered story. I loved the gameplay. I love the everything, especially the interactive elements, how the mouse controls and stuff are all done. I hope that's a future thing that just stays in all games going forward. A lot I loved about Secret of the Mimic, so to me it's definitely A tier. It's one of my favorites. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the game did well? What do you think the game didn't do well? Do you agree with me on a lot of these points? Do you disagree with me on a lot of these points? If you had to rank it on a tier list, where would you rank it? Do you think the game is absolutely garbage? But I can understand that some people don't like it as much as I do, but for me, it's A tier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've rambled on way too long in this video. This video has been, so many sections have been re-recorded. It's been kind of a struggle to speak for this long about the game. Maybe this should have been separated into separate videos, but that's what I've got for now. And hopefully next video will be at least next discussion video will be a future Five Nights at Freddy's video, so let me know if you're actually interested in seeing that kind of thing. I'll see you next time.